Guten Abend, this is my project, Pig Destroyer MFer, and this is the master. Yes, so, this is the final version of the song. Whoop-de-doo. So, here it is. Here's the waveform. I bounced this from the mixing project. I will show you how I bounced it. I bounced it under PCM, which allows me to do it under a WAV. I've done it under 24-bit because this is an optimal quality to master in. It's more it's you wouldn't typically want to master in 8 or 16-bit because 24-bit is just a higher quality, and yes, a WAV is also much higher quality than an MP3. It just means that it's a lossless quality audio track, essentially. So an MP3 has compression in order to make it a smaller file size, whereas a WAV is uncompressed. I did put the normalization to overload protection only, just in case there were any bits that did go over the 0 dB, which would cause distortion. So this is to help lower the volume of that a little bit, just when that section it does, opposed to the entire track that would be on. But I didn't want to choose off because I thought it'd make more sense to have overload protection on. But yes, this is how I bounced it. This is the bounce. The plugins I've used, I've only used 3 plugins to master the track. I did originally use 6, but I got rid of these 3 here. So I started off with Tube EQ, just to boost a little bit the high end. I've just put 2.5 decibels into the 6K range. I thought it needed just an extra bit of brightness, just to make it sound more rounded and a bit less dull. I've also boosted the lows by 2 decibels at 60 Hz as well, just to get that low end punchy sound from especially the kick and the bass. Else the song's going to sound a bit hollow. I put the output model to punchy because it's quite a punchy song. I thought it made sense to do it that way. I've also put the high peak of 3.2 at 1.5K. I just thought it sounded nicer this way. I didn't really intend to use it. I was just messing about with it, and then it just kind of turned out that it sounded good from it, so I just decided to keep it. Yeah, those are all the settings that I've messed with under the Tube EQ. I have then used the Fresh Air plugin that I've been using a lot recently. So, as you can see, I've added quite a lot of mid to high presence. I've added 54%, which has definitely brought the mids more. It's made them sound closer and more free in a way. I quite liked how it sounded, so I kept it that way. And I've only added 18% high air presence, because if I add too much, or if I could go too crazy with it, it just sounds too much and it's not enjoyable at all, really. So I kept this quite low. But the mid air presence, I definitely used a lot of that. It sounded a lot better off from it. I didn't use it, but I did then put this limiter on it at 3 dB gain. And I only touched this gain knob, really, to be honest. And the release, it was set to 250, I believe, but I've set it to 100. Yeah, 250. But I've left it 100. I want quite a quick release because, like I said in the Tube EQ, it's quite a punchy song and it's quite fast as well. So I really wanted a quick release with that. But in the end, I didn't end up using this, and I'll explain why. I do have another limiter here. It's just at 1.4 gain, but it's still got that 250 millisecond release. I was essentially experimenting between the two different limiters and seeing what different kind of sounds I can get from them. So I wanted to see what it'd sound like with less gain, but a longer release. And yeah. I then have the Magma Stress box here. I have it set to a compression of 1.32. Yet again, I've not used it in the final master. And I'll explain why shortly. But yeah, I just wanted when I put this on originally, I just wanted it to sound just bigger and just a bit less dynamic between the tracks. I wanted it to all sound really loud together. So I used a bit of this, even though I didn't end up using it. But finally, I have used the BX Master Desk from Plugin Alliance. I like this a lot. I did say in my last master that I had a bit more struggle than I normally do using this. And I think it's just the kind of genre of music. I'm not so much used to using this Master Desk with extreme metal like this. But nonetheless, I have gotten a nice sound out of it. So, again, I wasn't so keen on the stereo enhancement for these. I think the songs already sound pretty damn wide already. And if I beef up the stereo enhancement, it just ends up sounding actually kind of smaller than what it should do. Even if I'm boosting the stereo enhance, it just, I found that it just sounded narrower and not as big in scope, stereo-wise. So I've actually taken away some stereo, and I think that's enhanced it a lot, I think. It still sounds really big and wide, and the cymbals are still all around you, and same with the toms, the guitars. It still sounds big and wide, but I've just attenuated it, essentially. I have added 28% later for tone. It's just adding a bit more bright end into the song I thought helped a lot. And then I also have added a bit more foundation, which is that low end presence. I thought it needed the low end, even though I've added some in the tube EQ. Same with the bright end tone. But I just think it needed a bit more in the Master Desk just to get it right. And I think I have gotten it right here. Yet again, I have not messed with the THD. I still yet to find a good reason to mess around with it that benefits the actual music itself. So I've just left it alone. In my last song that I mastered, I've set the compressor to soft, but I've left it on hard here because I didn't think the soft compression worked very well. The track is too fast and punchy of a song, so I left it on hard because I thought it sounded right. And I did A-B the difference a lot, and I ended up thinking hard sounded better. But yeah, essentially, back to the reason on why I haven't used these plugins was because I put these in before I put the Master Desk. So the Master Desk was the second to last thing that I put in, and the Magma Stress Box being the last thing. The Magma Stress Box was more of an experiment just to see what I thought about it, and then I ended up not liking it, so I took it off. But the limiters, typically, historically, I have used limiters and then a BX Master Desk, although I found that with a limiter on followed by the BX Master Desk, it sounded too much. It sounded too... The dynamics were squashed completely and everything was really, really loud. And while that's fun, I guess, from a listening perspective, it wasn't the way that I would want it to be. That's why I ended up playing around with two different limiters. So this was the first limiter, the one with 3 decibels. So I cranked it to about 3, well, 2-3. And I was like, yes, that sounds good, without the context of the Master Desk, because I hadn't done it yet. So I said, yes, okay, I like it, but like this. Then I moved on to the Master Desk, and then I realised it sounded too squashed. It sounded not how it should be. It sounded very undynamic. So I experimented with, maybe I just need a limiter that's working not as hard. So I left this one here, just deactivated it, put this one on, and thought I'd try something a bit different. So I tried 1.4 gain, which is half the gain, and then a release of 250 milliseconds, and it still didn't sound right. So I just completely turned them off. I thought I actually liked the way that it sounds without the limiters, and I wasn't that keen on having it if it's not for a reason. I then tried the Magma Stress box just to see if that would make any difference. Maybe I'd enjoy it a bit more than the limiters, and I think I do enjoy it a little bit more, but I still think it detracts, so it's not worth it to have it in there. But yeah, as you can see, I have 2 tracks here, one that's just empty, and one that is, of course, the master. Originally, I was going to have it like this, so that I would have the Muzak section, which is going to be its own song, followed into the very last line of the monologue, "What's the push of a button?" followed by the intro, the drums. I was going to master this separately to this, because I thought maybe it would make sense if it's going to be its own song, but I ended up not doing that because it ended up not making sense like it did before to me. I thought after a while that because they're going to be going into each other, the songs, it makes sense for them to be mastered the same way. And a problem is, if I just mute the audio so you can't hear it, if I play this, you can see that the actual volume of it's relatively... Oh, wait, no, this is wrong. There we go. The actual volume of it is relatively low. It's at negative 10.7, but it still sounds pretty loud in person. The perceived loudness of it is actually pretty good. See, it's getting up to 3.2 there with the pianos, but if I tap it, it's going to go back to negative 10. Then I come back here, and we go back to negative 0, which is how it should be for a master. And it stays that way all throughout the track. There you go, even this section that looks pretty loud, it's 0. But yeah, I think this is sounding pretty damn good, and I'm quite proud of it. But yeah, end of video.